I do electrical work for a living. I've been working in old Baltimore lately, and most of the buildings in Baltimore are connected by tunnels. So about a few months ago, I was working on a building, putting lights in the tunnels. Well, one day on my lunch break, I decided to walk around the tunnels. I walked for about 20 minutes when I thought I heard my foreman call me down one of the halls. I assumed he went to look around as well. So I started to walk down the hall, and it started to get deeper and colder. I thought about turning around because I didn't want to get lost, but then I heard it again, so I went a little deeper. Eventually, I hit a room about the size of a baseball court with probably 20-foot-high ceilings. The ground was all sticky, and every step I took sounded like I was undoing a heavy Velcro strap. There were skulls from small animals everywhere in there, placed to look like a big triangle pointing to a very large, dog-like skeleton. At this point, I was freezing and really scared. I started to smell a harsh burning smell and heard what sounded like a big dog running on concrete. I could hear it get louder and closer, louder and closer. I started running. Finally, after what felt like an hour of running at full sprint, I ran into a staircase with a big, heavy metal door at the end of it. I heard the noises like they were right around the corner. So with all my might and adrenaline-fueled strength, I ripped the door open and slammed it behind me, then heard and felt a hard thud against the door. I turned around to see that I was standing under the docks by the Four Seasons and the Marriott Hotel. I called my boss and told him I got lost in the tunnels and needed to get picked up. Since that day, I refused to go in the tunnels under Baltimore or go into sub-basements in Baltimore. I was playing in the woods and tripped over something solid. Found it was a cement circle and realized it was an underground door. The next day I come back with a crowbar to open, and like hell I'm going in unarmed. Pull it up, and it's a Cold War-era personal bomb shelter. That failed? There was a giant crack in the roof. The floor was covered in slime. But what was worse is the walls are covered in writings. "This is the end, we must die, everyone is gone till I find the back wall," and a giant red scrawl, "Get the FCK out of my home." That's it, FK kiss. MF king out. I sprint up the door and close it. I don't want to know what the hell that was. But I come back the next day. It's burned out. I didn't set a fire intentionally, and I didn't smell smoke leaving. A friend and I used to work at a university in a building that was large and located in a city. The street-level floor was actually labeled as the 4th floor. The floors below that had light from interior courtyards. The elevators and stairs all stopped at 1, but there was clearly a level below that could be seen from one of the interior courtyards. One day, we slipped through the window into the basement. As we suspected, none of the equipment seemed to be in use anymore, but it was cool old stuff. As we were looking around, we found a stairway down. So down we went to another floor that seemed to hold supports for the giant machines above, plus some large storage areas for coal. As we were looking around, we found what looked like a large tool shed standing in the middle of the floor. We didn't want to damage anything, but we were intensely curious. So we managed to very carefully pry away a nailed-down board to see the top of a spiral staircase going down. At this point, we were 5 stories underground, and by design, nobody else knew that we were there. We slipped through the hole in the wall and started to climb down a rickety, old, metal stairway. I was in the back, but my friend in the lead immediately and calmly said, "Back up, now." In the shed, he explained that the bottom of the stairs seemed to be completely rusted away. There was a hallway filled with water, and it wasn't clear how deep the water in the hallway was. It could have been a few inches or a few feet. I wanted to take a look, so I went down the stairs. Sure enough, it was as he describes, with 2 additional details. An old Bell System hard hat floated upside down in the water below the staircase. After a few seconds, a wake in the water was heading toward me. At that point, it was up. Now, the wake could have been a wave caused by us moving around or a rat swimming in the water, but it wasn't exactly a time when we wanted to discover the local wildlife. We waited at the top of the stairs for a few minutes just to see if anything appeared, but it all went silent. We decided the tunnel would remain. My buddy and I spent many years crawling through sewer pipes. One day, we were out in the woods, him, and another friend. We found some pipes sticking out of a hillside and agreed to explore it. Well, we crawled down this thing a good 600 feet or so on our hands and knees. At times, it gets smaller, and we are on our stomachs. Finally, it comes to one of those big manhole rooms, and we get the impression we're under a house. Of course, we also know that in some places, manholes will exist in the middle of nowhere for future developments. Anyway, the The room has 3 other super small pipes heading off into different directions. Like slither on your stomach size. We choose one and make our friend Z go first. We go down about 300 feet, and he shouts back that there's something in the way. He thinks it's the body of an animal. But since we are using weak headlamps, he can't tell. We coerce him to climb over it. He's freaking out, saying HT is all over his clothes and he doesn't know what it is. I climb over this dark lump of refuse. Feels like a body, but not human. Not even animal. Just alien. Smells bad. Smells horrible. I slide over this nasty HT, almost puking. My buddy behind me comes next. Same story. We keep going, asking ourselves why we even do this HT in the first place. We crawl another few hundred feet. Z starts complaining about a horrible god-awful stench ahead. We can't, for the life of us, get him to continue. He ends up throwing up. We start throwing the idea around of gas of some sort. He says there's something big up ahead. Looks like an honest-to-God body. Human, maybe. We slide backward quickly until we get to the manhole room. We crawl out quickly. We get into the daylight and investigate the shy T stuck to our clothes from the thing we slid over. It's dark. Bloody dark. Refuse dark. Looks like fur. We agree that it was probably a trapped animal. We never go back ever again. I'm an urban explorer, but nearly everything I've done was above ground. But there was an old farmhouse near me now demolished that I explored several times, including the basement. I'd say the times something unexplained happened were something like less than 5% of my expeditions, but I had several in this house. It had been abandoned for at least 30 years, was in very poor shape, and used to be a big party spot for teens. A friend can recall waking up on the lawn one morning, still drunk, surrounded by empty bottles. The basement had a bunch of the usual laughable wannabe satanic taggings across one wall in red paint and religious messages in black countering it on the opposite wall. The underground experience happened one night as 3 or 4 of us were walking up the staircase out of the basement, which had solid walls on both sides. As we did, each person in turn, from top down, got their shoulder bumped, as though a person were going down past us as we were going up. There's an abandoned and boarded up WWII fort in the southern part of Belgium that we often sneak into with the scouts. Getting in there requires scaling a sheer wall where we've placed anchoring points for ropes and climbing gear next to a relatively busy road. So you're being super quiet, making no light, and cowering every time a car passes by so he doesn't spot you in his lights. The atmosphere is set. The moment you enter it, it's like diving into water. Sound stops, and the entire place is at a constant 14 degrees Celsius, with a slight breeze passing through. The tunnel is barely large enough for me, slightly broader than the average person, to pass without turning my body sideways. The tunnel is just high enough to work up a decent gait while hunched over. If someone ahead of you blocks a passage for a moment, the breeze stops, and it feels like the entire tunnel network takes a breath. Because of the way the tunnels are constructed, they echo in such a way that your own footsteps seem to be coming from behind you. They also seem to take one more step than you do when you stop. Of course, we don't allow the guys and gals to take any source of light in there, so it's pretty scary overall. So I'm in there, posted at a side passage to ensure everyone takes the same path and doesn't get lost. I go in first, before any of the climbers arrive, so they don't know there are friendly faces in there to help them. I'm in there for a while, just waiting for the first to come by, when I see a dancing little light coming down the long hallway. I quietly settle back in my nook and wait for whoever was smart enough to hide some matches and take them away. The light quietly bobs closer when I realize there aren't any footsteps accompanying it. I poke my head around the corner just in time to see it disappear. I hear no footsteps still. I settle back and wait some more when I realize I do hear some scuffling. Very faint. Breathing noises, but still very faint. I become aware of a wet heat coming from right in front of me, with a faint smell of person's sweat, dirt. Suddenly, I realize there's someone there, right in front of me, inches from my face. The breathing stops suddenly. Whatever it is aware of me as well. We're both holding our breath, both acutely aware of each other. It takes ages. I'm sitting there, unable to move, speak, or breathe properly. The wet heat passes, and some minutes later, I become aware of a very faint light coming from my right side, which soon dissipates and leaves. Some time later still, I hear the familiar stomping of combat boots coming down the hallway from my left. I stop the person, tell them to keep following the passageway, and take the first right they come to. Out of curiosity, I asked who went in first. No one. He went in first. It was explained much later. The first guy got lost down a side passage, and the second girl passed him by. She got nervous from the footsteps and removed her shoes. She saw me poke my head from around the corner and dropped the match. She passed me very slowly. One of the later checkpoints said she was crying her eyes out. I once was alone at Moorgate Station in London after staying for a few after-work drinks with my buddy. It was around 10 p.m., so I left the pub, walked to the station, and found I had missed the previous train by about 5 minutes. Moorgate is an underground station, but the overground trains depart and terminate there. The train I needed to catch always departs from one of two platforms that are in their individual tunnels adjacent to one another, but accessible by foot, as they are connected by paths that connect the platforms every 15 feet or so. I sat on the bench right at the end near where the front of the train would be when departing. As I sat there, I saw some movement in the corner of my eye, so I turned and stared to see just a regular guy dressed in dark clothing come through from the other platform passage about 10 meters from me and thought nothing of it. He went by the track, stared down, backed away, and ran back through the passage to the other platform. I thought to myself, that was weird, and quickly got up to follow him and find out why he was running, if he was okay. I was no more than 5 seconds behind him, and the exit entry to the platform is right by the other end, which was a good 150 meters or so away. As I went through the passage to the other platform, I looked to see no one there. I then went back to the other platform. Again, I was the only one there, apart from a woman who just reached the bottom of the escalator to the platform entrance right down the other end. It was something I couldn't explain, and I was sure I couldn't recall any footsteps that made it even weirder. London is an old place and has a lot of history, so I'm not sure if there was an event that could give reasoning to what I experienced, but it's a memory that will always stick with me.